Welcome to the Wild West, where the whiskey was strong, the coffee was tar, and the food, well, let's just say it was more about survival than savoring. Forget those Hollywood scenes of juicy steaks and fresh-baked pies. Real saloon fare was more like, what can we boil until it's edible, with a side of don't ask, just swallow. Before we dive into dusty saloons and questionable stew, hit the comments and tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from and what time is it in your corner of the Wild West? Ever wondered what was actually on the menu in a Wild West saloon? Spoiler, it wasn't just whiskey and fistfights. Today we're taking you through the smoky, greasy, questionable kitchens of frontier America to discover what people really ate and somehow lived to tell the tale. When you stepped into a saloon, the first thing that hit you wasn't the sound of piano keys, it was the smell. Imagine a pungent cocktail of sweat, wet tobacco, horses, stale beer, and if you were lucky, something vaguely edible cooking in the back. It was like walking into a barn where someone decided to host a chili cook-off during a boxing match. The air was thick enough to chew, and that might have been preferable to some of the actual food on offer. Now let's talk about beans, the frontier superfood. If you were in a saloon and didn't see beans, you were either hallucinating or had stumbled into the wrong century. Pinto beans, black beans, navy beans, no one cared about the variety. If it could be boiled into a paste and dumped in a bowl, it was dinner. These little legumes were cheap, filling, and could survive a cattle stampede, a gunfight, and a week in someone's saddlebag without losing form. Honestly, beans had more survival skills than most cowboys. Cooked over a fire with salt pork and maybe a hint of onion if the cook was feeling fancy, beans weren't gourmet, but they got the job done. They were the reliable friend of every cowboy, miner, and drifter. Always there, always the same, and always, well, musical. Let's just say the saloon wasn't just noisy because of gunfights and bar brawls. Speaking of salt pork, this wasn't your crispy Sunday morning bacon. No, salt pork was bacon's tougher, saltier, less charming cousin who shows up uninvited and refuses to leave. This stuff was preserved in enough salt to make the Dead Sea jealous. Stored in barrels and sliced off as needed, it was the flavor enhancer of choice, not because it tasted good, but because it tasted like something. Fried until crunchy or chewy, depending on the cook's mood or level of sobriety, salt pork flavored everything from beans to stews. Was it fresh? Who cared? Did it kill the last guy? No? Good enough. The recipe was simple. Take meat, add salt until it stops being meat, then add more salt. Cooked just right, it was tolerable. Cooked poorly, which was often it was like chewing on a salted leather boot, but it was meat, and in the West, meat meant power, or at least fewer empty stomach growls. Now let's dive into the mysterious world of frontier stew, also known as culinary roulette. Stew was where everything went to hide. You didn't ask what was in it, you just hoped it wasn't someone's pet. The recipe was simple. Whatever wasn't nailed down or actively escaping went into the pot. Beef? Sure. Rabbit? Why not? Squirrel? Throw it in. Rattlesnake? Adds character. Bootstring? Adds texture. Vegetables, if they showed up at all, were boiled into submission until they resembled a grayish mush. The result was a bubbling pot of maybe meat with flavor, courtesy of whatever was on the cook's hands. Each spoonful was an adventure. You might get a chunk of something identifiable, or you might just get a mouthful of warm, salty water. But it was hot, it filled your belly, and it probably wouldn't kill you. Probably. In the world of Wild West cuisine, bread came in two forms, biscuits and hardtack. Biscuits, when done right, were like gold. Fluffy, warm, baked in cast iron. They were a little piece of heaven in a world that often felt like hell. A good biscuit could make you forget about the mystery stew you just ate, or the fact that your horse ran off with all your money. But then there was hardtack. Oh, hardtack. If biscuits were heaven, hardtack was purgatory in cracker form. These rock-hard slabs of flour and water were edible only after a 30-minute soak in stew, coffee, or whiskey. Sometimes they had weevils. That was just extra protein, or so the optimists said. Hardtack could survive anything, including apparently being eaten. It was less food and more of a challenge. Can you eat it without breaking a tooth? Was a popular saloon game. Now let's talk about coffee, the liquid brave. In the Wild West, coffee wasn't just a drink, it was a dare. Grounds were thrown into a kettle, boiled into tar, and served unfiltered. The bottom of your cup was basically mud. It was less cup of joe and more cup of woe. But it kept cowboys awake, warm, and sort of alive. That was enough. The process was simple. Boil water, throw in coffee grounds, maybe some eggshells for clarity, or just because, and let it simmer until it could strip paint. Milk, sugar, those were for city folks. Real cowboys took their coffee black as night and thick as mud. It was said that a good cup of frontier coffee could put hair on your chest, even if you were a horse. For those with a sweet tooth, and intact teeth were a luxury in those days, cornbread and molasses were the West's version of dessert. Cornbread was dry and hard, more weapon than food. But add a dollop of molasses, and suddenly you had something almost edible. It wasn't cake, it wasn't pie, but it was sweet. And in the Wild West, that was close enough to dessert. Molasses was the miracle that made many foods palatable. It could make hardtack chewable, cornbread enjoyable, and even make that mysterious stew taste like something other than regret. No icing, no whipped cream, just grit, grain, and gooey hope. It was the closest thing to candy most folks got, unless you count the rock-hard peppermint sticks that could double as tent pegs. When it came to meat, the rule was simple. If it moved, it was food. Steak was a gamble. It could be a fresh slab of beef, or squirrel with ambition. If it didn't twitch when you poked it, it was considered edible. And if you found a whisker in your meat, just sip your whiskey and carry on. It was protein after all, and protein meant strength. The meat situation in saloons was a far cry from the juicy steaks we imagine. More often than not, it was tough, gamey, and of questionable origin. But after a long day on the trail or in the mines, any meat was good meat. And if it tasted a bit off, well, that's what the whiskey was for, to kill the taste and any potential bacteria. Behind the bar, you'd often find jars of pickled everything. Pickled eggs, onions, and even peaches floated in murky brine, looking more like science experiments than food. These were snacks, believe it or not. A pickled egg and a shot of whiskey was the Wild West equivalent of happy hour appetizers. Cheese, when available, was a mystery unto itself. Hard, soft, sweaty, or possibly evolving into a new life form, it didn't matter. It was protein, and that counted. The rule with saloon cheese was simple. If it hadn't walked off the plate on its own, it was still good to eat. Some cheeses were so hard they could be used as wagon wheel wedges in a pinch. And finally we come to whiskey, the ultimate frontier food group. When all else failed, there was always whiskey. Made in back rooms, served in tin cups, and capable of knocking a man flat, whiskey was food, water, and medicine all rolled into one. Some drank it with a pickled egg floating in it. That was basically a balanced meal by Wild West standards. The whiskey in most saloons wasn't the smooth, aged stuff we sip today. It was raw, potent, and often made yesterday. It could strip paint, disinfect wounds, and make you forget you just ate a bowl of mystery stew. Some folks claimed it could even make you bulletproof, though testing that theory was generally discouraged. So would you eat Wild West saloon food? Maybe, if you were starving, broke, or drunk, which, let's be honest, most people were. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't gourmet, but it was real. And in the Wild West, real was all you needed. It kept people alive, gave them the energy to tame a wild land, and occasionally it even tasted good. Just don't ask what's in the stew, and you'll be fine.